We would like to thank our sponsor, Eileen Savings. Eileen Savings, a division of member-owned cooperative First West Credit Union, provides banking, borrowing, and investment services for residents and businesses across Vancouver Island and the Southern Gulf Islands. Eileen Savings brings innovative products, an extensive branch network, and local decision-making to the banking experience.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Business Matters presented by Eileen Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, where we delve into the stories and insights of leaders and change makers in our community. I'm your host, Rob Capello, and today we're joined by Eileen Eby, the Executive Director of the 1000 by 5 Children's Book Recycling Project. Eileen, thank you for joining me today.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting us.
So this program or initiative is making strides in child literacy by ensuring that children have access to 1,000 books by the age of 5. So I want to go in and explore that journey and how it started and yourself as well. So where I'd like to start actually as well is maybe we could just dive into a little bit about your background. So I'm curious, what were you doing before you joined 1000 by 5?
Okay, sure. I've been with 1000 by 5 for about 12 years now. I think we're in our 13th year. And before that, I was an elementary school principal in the Victoria School District. And also in the board office dealing with literacy with elementary learners. So you could say literacy has been a lifelong passion. It was kind of a natural segue when I was approached to see if I'd head this project after I retired.
So what was the origins of 1000 by 5? So how did that transition from your principal? I get now the passion for literacy if you have that background. How did those two worlds join together?
The whole project, 1000 by 5, was started on the peninsula by a woman named Daphne McNaughton, who also was a retired principal. And they received funding at that point in time from a group called Success by 6, which was what it was, Success by 6. And loosely, there are 3000 by 5 projects, one in the peninsula, which conforms to the Saanich School Board, and one on the middle part of the lower island, which has Esquimalt, Old Bay, Victoria, View Royal, Highlands, and I hope I haven't missed anybody in there. And that's the project I organized, and I was approached to say, this is going so well in the peninsula, would you be interested in getting it going in your area? And it was an instant yes. And I had a lot of friends in the school district. And it was an instant yes for them because everyone knows how important literacy before you come to school is. And then a few years later, the West Shore started. So for me, I was approached and it was just a natural fit to join a project that had already been initiated on the peninsula.
Interesting. And so what, for people that are not familiar with 1000 by 5, maybe can you give us just a high-level overview of the program, the initiatives you guys work on, and how the actual association works?
Sure. I'll tell you what we do, and maybe we'll talk about why as we go on. So what we do is collect books from families, mostly, who donate them to a big pink bin or whatever color bin in an elementary school. I send out newsletters through the schools and talk a little bit about why early literacy is important. They take the books to the school when bin gets full. Along comes the cartage from the district. They bring them over to a school where 12, in my case, I'll talk about our case mostly, 12 volunteers meet every Wednesday. And we go through these carton of books that come in all the time. And we sort them and we put labels into them. Don't know if that's going to show up at all. Then we bag them up and into 3 sort of age categories: babies, 2 to 3 year olds, and 4 to 5 year olds. The magic comes in the next part. We work, in our case, with 26 different social agencies, everything from the Mustard Seed to Strong Starts, which are in 6 of our elementary schools, to public health, to a lot of First Nations organizations. They work with families in turn who maybe are just not as exposed to early literacy at home, or perhaps, and most likely, the resources aren't there to always be purchasing those resources for their children. So every month, the Victoria 1000 by 5, we send out about 3,000 books into them. And each bag has 3. So that's 1,000 children receiving books. And we've nailed 320,000 books in our project so far.
That's amazing.
Isn't it cool?
That is so cool. So you don't distribute direct to families. So you'll go through groups that then go to families.
Yeah, and the reason we think that's really important is, first of all, that's where families are going to
Right, right.
receive whatever assistance or programming that they're looking for. It's all free programming.
Okay.
We do not send them to preschools, for example.
Right.
So the intent is to have the books go into the hands of children who maybe aren't accessing a lot of books otherwise.
Right.
And agencies have the relationships with those families and can distribute and model kind of gently, here's
Right, right, right.
here's a gift for you from 1000 by 5. We know it's working because no agency quits. And
Yeah.
except for COVID, our numbers did not go down in demand.
Right. Interesting. So I'm curious, from you mentioned most of the donors are, individuals in schools, do organizations or businesses get involved as
Yes.
well?
It's astounding what's happened over the last few years. When we started as a pilot project, we had 6 schools donating,
Okay.
and then we bumped it up to all the schools in the Victoria School District. Again, just talking about the Victoria Project, which is 26 elementary. Then we added 8 independent schools, and then we've got everything from Raymond James doing book drives. Shout out to our Budas preschool who challenged
Right.
5 other preschools to do the book drive. Several thrift stores have said, we'll just save our extra books that don't get bought for you.
Right, right.
Brown Social House in Uptown. So it's nice to say thank you to some of these people.
Yeah.
Have done book drives and also funding to us. And so, yeah, the donors of books have become varied. I think we're up to 40 different donors. My spreadsheet is so small.
That's great. That is
It's
great.
fantastic. And that's our ultimate goal is
Right.
to get the families in our community more aware of the need for early literacy and how easy it is to look under your bed and pull out the books that you're not reading to little kids anymore.
Right. And are there specific type of books that you are looking for? Like you're saying, I know it's for children, that are under 5 or 5 and under that you're focused on, but are there specific ones that you usually try to get more of?
I guess generally they're picture books.
Okay.
Because that's the age group that enjoys when they're listening to a story, they are using the pictures as much as they are
Right.
the words. And we do not send out parenting books that sometimes come into us because we kind of think that's not our mandate. It's to introduce literacy. We don't send out religious books
Okay.
that are, because we think, again, that's a choice. And so if they come to us, we found ways, other avenues to get them out.
Okay.
And don't send out anything that's culturally insensitive as
Right.
as thought by us when we look at them. So,
Right.
yeah, it's pretty well, it's a wide range. And what's interesting to us is every Wednesday, so we've sent out 320,000 books. Every single Wednesday, someone will say, stop, you got to listen or look at this beautiful book. And
Oh, that's
how
great.
can there be this many good books?
That's great.
Mhm.
Do you find an aspect of like the books are almost like recycled, for lack of a better word, in the sense of like they'll go out into the community and then they come back to you? Like, do they
Some
kind
do.
of?
Yeah,
Okay.
some do. We've sort of set it up with the intent to build a home library. So if
Got
a
it.
child has, it's not like a lending library so much as a gift to the child. So if a
Right.
child's going to a particular program, say one of the Strong Starts,
Right.
there's a monthly rotation. So in one year, school year, they could get 30 books, which
Got
kind of
it.
changes the culture of your home, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I would say that fewer than 10% come back to us, and we know that because our label's in it. And so if we get a book that we see the label already in it, we know it's been returned.
Right.
I think they probably do get moved around, but not always back to us.
Interesting. Well, it's interesting that how, with everything going digital, the one thing that I feel that hasn't are books, right? The bookstores are
Absolutely.
still open, used bookstores like that. If anything, it's almost more now than there was before.
Yeah, and it's so important. Maybe I can talk a bit about the why for
Yeah.
early literacy. It's not teaching reading. It's not having sound out the words or use phonetics. It's more that if a child listens to a book, they kind of get some book knowledge. Like this is
Right.
front and the right side up. Not like
Yep.
this.
Yeah.
And they get to learn that from the early years. Well, this is not the best example because they don't like not, but where's the big creature? And then
Right.
secondly, as they develop, you say, well, what do you think they're doing? What are they going to do next? And so that whole exposure to language, reading, listening, and speaking is so interconnected for brain development in the early years. And there is something different about listening to a story than there is looking at a screen
Right.
in terms of language development. It's just really strongly supported by the research. And that the single most important factor, you put a quarter in and I can keep going for a while,
That's so good. I love it.
is that reading at home is the single greatest factor and a predictor of early success in school. More
Interesting.
than the programs that they can go to, more than the educational level of the parents. It's that actual sitting down each and every day to read a book, maybe 10 times over, right?
Right. I remember that with my kids, the same book you read, they
Over and
fall
over.
in love with a book, you just read it over and over and over.
And what they learn, you probably watched, is they learn how to predict. They learn to pretend read, right?
Right.
So they're really learning all sorts of skills just by osmosis. And the other thing they're doing is they're seeing that you love reading too. So you put them on your knee and you read the story again and again and again, and they go, well, reading is fun. And so that attitude carries on into school and makes them more likely to succeed.
Interesting. I'm curious about, I know organizations, you mentioned this, your Wednesdays, is that organizations like yourself thrive from, obviously with community contributions, but volunteers. Can you speak a little bit about the roles volunteers play for you guys? I know I watched some videos where you're showcasing some of the bus. Can you speak a little bit around that?
I can. We just had a coffee party yesterday at my house to celebrate.
I love it. That's awesome.
And the group that are with me and with the other two organizations are all retired teachers or principals or in that educator realm. And interestingly, for us, we're probably one of the few organizations that I have to say to prospective volunteers, gee, we're kind of full at the moment. So the volunteers stick with the program, I think for two reasons. They know the value.
Right.
And it's also a great social network for themselves. So they have become very active in sort of saying, oh, you might want to speak to this group or that group, or here's something you could do to get us more books. Or we have friended the little libraries that are all over town. And we have so the books that we get that are too old. And many of the volunteers say, oh, I'll just take them over here and plunk them in. They're enthusiastic, they're creative, they're intelligent about what we're trying to do, and they are the A team of activity. They are not bored people sitting around. They've got a lot on and think this is important to do.
Love it. That's so good. Yeah, and I love the videos and stuff I saw on the site and what you guys engage in. So I'm curious, you mentioned COVID, but outside of that, what are some of the challenges you faced over the last few years that you've really encountered? Is it like most of our problem? Is it funding? Is it it doesn't sound like lack of volunteers, but what are some of the challenges you're facing as an organization?
Yeah, I'll speak to the funding one first. First, I should give some thank you to some ongoing funders, but you're right, COVID challenged that for all charitable organizations, and we had to work doubly hard and be more creative in how we used our resources. But the Times Colonist Literacy Fund has been really supportive about the Rotary clubs. Probably 6 or so Rotary clubs have helped out. Their funding also gets
absolutely
a little bit, and so we've had a little bit less from all of these groups, but are grateful nonetheless. First West Foundation, as a matter of fact, and that's been great. So the funding is always a challenge. And why do we need it? If I'm saying that we're getting all these books, we don't get enough books for babies. They're destroyed and we can't send them out. We only send out things that look new, and books that come in that used to belong to a baby are chewed, have jam on them. And and so I guess Orca Book Publishers has also given us some very nice discounts on new books. And so in COVID, when we had fewer books, I had to buy more books. And it was a catch-22. Didn't have as much money, but had to buy more. So, and that still has a trickle effect. Families were not able to go into schools for over a year, close to 2 years. And so that habit of there's the pink bin in the front door got destroyed. So we ended up purchasing books to give to kindergarten kids, which increased our costs, but hopefully helped with marketing to let families know, here's a program in your school, bring in your books.
That's awesome.
And the other challenge that we've had is what the agencies had as fewer families coming up to programs or programs being canceled during COVID. And
Right.
it's not back to normal. It really isn't.
It still isn't.
No, they have
Wow.
not started, all those agencies don't have all the same programs they used to or the same attendance.
Mm,
The mustard seeds clientele has changed a fair bit. And so
right.
where we used to send 250 bags of books, that's 750 books a month, we're doing a third that right now
Mm,
because of the families not coming out. So I'd say the outreach portion is still a challenge, which wasn't so much of one before.
or,
And then the donors, both the books and the money that comes in is ongoing work.
yeah.
And the volunteers are fantastic and we're good in that department.
Interesting. Well, even though you're not sending out as much, I know you guys reached a pretty big milestone earlier this year of donating over 300,000 books. And now you tell me you're at 325, whatever it may
Mhm.
be. So it's growing. But what is that? You've been with the organization for 12. What did that achievement mean to you? Like, can you speak a little bit of sort of means to the program?
Yes, we the day that we sort of celebrated that milestone,
Yeah.
we had participants from all the different avenues. So of course the volunteers were there.
Yeah.
Members of the school district, which I should say wouldn't exist without that huge
Right.
partnership, right?
Right.
They were there. Some of the donors, Standards Anonymous, the Rotary Club, others came, and also some of the agencies that give out books. And as we stood in a circle, it was just so apparent, I mean, to sound trite, how it takes a community to
Right. Right.
produce this. And I think that we all saw as we looked around how it worked, how the
Mm.
books coming in from schools and this volunteers speaking about why they volunteer, like why do
Yeah.
you come every Wednesday to answer?
Yeah.
And they were able to talk about how important that is to literacy is to little people. And then the recipients, I guess, from the agencies that said, in many cases, we know that these families don't have books unless
Right.
they come from you. Or one agency person saying, we used to just be a play center. And when your books first came, they sat in a corner, these bags. And now the children are saying, when are we getting those books again? So they want to open them when they arrive. So that milestone was a marker for what's going on week after week and year after year. But it was powerful, I think, to most of us sitting in that room that day.
I imagine. And I imagine like you must have like there's so many inspiring moments that you can probably dig back on and think about. But and reaching that milestone is one of them. But is there anything that sort of really stands out for you? Is there a particular moment or a success story that really stands out or inspires you or moves you when you think back on it?
Yeah. Well, there's probably several, but one
Yeah.
that comes to mind might be the mustard seed. Going
Mm,
back to our partnership, which is how we view all of these things, that
right.
we're in partners with so many donors and distributing agencies. And when, again, the person who initiated contact with us many, many years ago, and they're essentially a food and clothing bank,
Interesting.
and she was saying the same kind of thing that initially they had to sort of push the books on people.
Yep. Yep.
And then we had, through COVID, we had one of our volunteers deliver the books. And the only male we've got, by the way, who is he doesn't come and sort, but he does do deliveries for us. He would say he would get out of his vehicle with a box of books and he couldn't make it to the place where he's supposed to drop them off if there were families, because they'd come and get the books and want the books. And so I think the powerful part is the children receiving the books, and we don't get to see a lot of that. We
Right.
just hear
Right.
stories.
Right.
So that's a powerful moment. I have another story from a Strong Start coordinator, and they are in 6 of the elementary schools in our district and cater
Okay.
to families with preschoolers. So the
Okay.
families are in the program with their preschooler babies now. And she said that sometimes some families would feel hesitant to come in, and she would go out in recess or when the parents are picking up the kids and just take the bags of books. And one father said to her that, thank you from my heart. And he touched her heart to say, we don't feel that comfortable coming into the school, but these books have been important to us. And my 7-year-old is also learning better to read because he's reading them to his 2-year-old brother.
Oh, interesting.
It's those kinds of stories that
That's great.
or you're making a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's amazing. I was curious, I was looking, is there other communities that are doing something similar? Like, is this program or initiative something you find in a lot of communities across like Western Canada, or are you
Mm.
guys fairly unique in that sense?
We're fairly unique and it's
Yeah.
organically spreading a little bit. So as I said, it
Mhm.
began on the peninsula and
Yeah.
then to our group in the West Shore. And then we've mentored the Salt Spring, the islands, and then Island a little bit. And then through Rotary, actually, one of the Rotary members had a friend in Vancouver and they wanted to start it in the Vancouver School District. So it's
Interesting.
been very organic that I'd say 6 or 8 other ones on the island and into Vancouver have heard about us, wanted to know if they could do it. It's very transferable, as you can see.
Yeah, yeah,
The supply chain and the need is right there, and you're going to
yeah,
find volunteers probably in every community who are passionate and capable of doing this. So yes, it would be something that could be transferred easily, but our mandate or our energy level or something has been to
for
just work
sure.
with the people who come to us.
100%. That makes sense. For people listening, I'm curious if you draw back in your experience with child literacy, is what are some like strategies that are effective, that or families that are listening for to engage with young children when it comes to reading? Like, is there some small takeaways that we can start doing if you're like, well, yeah, I haven't done this yet. I should start reading to my children. Is there something that you can kind of some takeaways that we can leave people?
Sure. So first of all, have a few books spread out on your coffee table that are
Mm,
picture books, and ask your child which one they'd like to listen to read, and let them have a choice in what you're going to be reading.
right.
And then you really won't have to push this idea because as they get more comfortable, let them hold the book.
Mm,
They'll take it out of your hands, so that's okay.
right.
It can happen very quickly. And then as you read, you stop a lot, and the dialogue while you're reading is really important. So
Mm,
if you're reading to a baby who's just getting language, you might say, "Where's the doggy?"
yeah.
and point to a picture of doggy and say doggy or something. And
Yeah.
you do quite a bit of dialogue. As the children get older and you're reading a similar book, you'd say, "Whoa, that dog looks excited. What do you think's going to happen?" And so
Right.
dialogue that gets them into predicting and understanding what storylines are all about and letting them turn the pages. In some cases, they'll stop you as they get the chance to read through and they'll want to say the words. So that again is just helping them put language and pictures together, which is really quite crucial.
Mm,
You kind of can't go wrong if you pick up the book and follow the child's lead and have a lot of conversation about what's going on.
right.
What you don't want to do as a parent is try to force feed how to read,
Mm,
this word says spot. See, what does it start with? You don't need to do that to encourage early literacy. You need to get them to love it, to understand how a book moves from the beginning through the middle to
mm,
the end.
mm.
Talk about it during and after.
Right.
Does that
Interesting.
help?
Yeah, I think that's great. Thank you for that. I mean, I know that there's definitely some favorites I remember reading to the kids, and I got just as much enjoyment out
Yeah.
of it, right? Because you're like, I became a huge Dr. Seuss fan, and
Oh, for sure.
even
Yeah.
into adulthood, right?
Dr. Seuss is still
Yeah,
popular.
and,
Yeah.
and even into adulthood though, like
Yes,
you
absolutely.
read, you
Yeah.
kind of go back to it. It's interesting. I'm curious if there's a message that you want to leave listeners with about the importance of child literacy. I think that, sometimes we take it for granted, or we don't think about it, but is there a message that you want to leave people with about the importance of it?
Yes, and maybe the need for supporting it. In
Mm,
our community, one of the things I haven't talked about is you would think in Victoria, Lower Island,
right,
we're so affluent and we're so resourceful.
right.
But when we look at the kindergarten assessments and the poverty levels, we're facing some of that as every community is. And
Interesting.
so I would like to leave people with the notion that the community really can support early literacy by simply sharing their resources, whether
Mm,
that's fundraising. It's wonderful to have partnerships with different businesses,
yeah.
sometimes do book drives or donate cash or come and volunteer for a day just to see what it's like. And to know that you're making a huge difference, that
Mm,
there's still um, thousands of children out there who do not have access to this essential piece of learning at home, which is what sets everybody up for later success and to become a business leader, for example.
yeah.
You're pretty literate, don't you?
Yeah, you would think so.
Yeah. So my message would be thank you for thinking about early literacy and please find a way to get involved through your business and through your home by either taking books to elementary schools or getting in touch with me through our website and finding out how to partner with us in other ways.
Love it. Well, Eileen, thank you so much for spending some time with me this morning and sharing the story of how, 1,000 by 5 is, really opening up worlds of possibilities for children through literacy. So thank you so much for the time this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you for asking.
And to our listeners, we hope this episode inspired you to support or engage with literacy initiatives in your community. And I encourage you to visit the website, like Eileen mentioned. It's 1,000 by 5, and it's 1,000 and then the letter x5.ca. So it's 1000x5.ca, and you can learn more about how you can support the great cause. So if you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and share the podcast with your friends, as we want to get the word out as much as possible. So until next time, thank you for tuning into Business Matters and have a great day. Thank you, Eileen. I really appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We would like to thank our sponsor, Island Savings. Island Savings, a division of member-owned cooperative First West Credit Union, provides banking, borrowing, and investment services for residents and businesses across Vancouver Island and the Southern Gulf Islands. Island Savings brings innovative products, an extensive branch network, and local decision-making to the banking experience.